follow up to that. So you have 15 to 20 people that mentored you, but you also talked about giving something back to them in that relationship. And I was thinking it was rather informal, but you just mentioned a mentor meeting. Did you actually say with these folks, you know, I'd like to have lunch with you once a month for an hour? Da, da, da.
No.
Was it? I'm just
I
trying to figure out
didn't,
formal,
because that's
informal.
what everybody does.
Okay.
What I would simply do was stay in touch with them, and if I had a challenge, I'd reach out to them with it. And if I wanted to just see them, because you know all of these people are also friends of mine now, you know, I'd buy them a drink, or you know, we'd go to a game together. So the typical approach is, I would like you to be my mentor. I would like us to have monthly phone calls and a quarterly lunch, and would you be my mentor?
Yeah.
And that's just, you know, as somebody who gets that kind of stuff all the time, it's like, like how am I gonna make that commitment work and all of this? It's, you know, strive for what is the core of the relationship, and then call on them. As a lot of the greatest mentoring advice I've gotten in very small transactions. Text, the conversation I had yesterday with one of my mentors was started with a text 2 days ago, need your advice on something quickly. He's in North Carolina right now. We played a little phone tag. It was about a 7-minute conversation. Priceless, done.
Yeah. Like it. Thank you.
You had a question, John?
Actually, it was going to be very similar to that. So, anyone else have any other questions about mentors?
Curate all kinds of diversity in your mentor network. It's easy to create your own echo chamber, and I have, you know, one of the greatest things for me about my mentor network is that I've been fortunate enough to be professionally raised by 4 amazing women who, you know, one of them was Congresswoman Susie Delaney, was my boss for 3 years at Microsoft. And my being intentional, you know, it'd be easy if I was too taken over by my implicit bias, my blind spots, to just sort of think about who are the guys I build around me. But so much of my learning and development as a leader actually formatively came from those 4 senior, incredibly accomplished women. That's been one of the things that I've made sure that I never lose. And there's lots of other examples, but check yourself on whether you're creating an echo chamber. And also a place where with just people who make you feel better about yourself. There are a couple of my mentors who every time I meet with them, I walk away feeling kind of like, oh, that hurt a little bit. But I know they love me, and I know that they're wanting to help me, and so they will challenge me on things that may leave a little bit of a mark, but make me better.
How did you use those mentors when you made that transition from Microsoft coming over here?
I told them my greatest fears. It's so interesting how in the world of, you know, just professionalism, we put on our masks. You don't have to, you know. I said to one of my mentors when I was considering this leap, so you guys understand what happened, and I want to make sure I put a health warning on my comments. I am so immensely proud of the professional training, the relationships, and the accomplishments of my Act 1 private sector high-tech career. And specifically for 15 years I spent at Microsoft, I received just extraordinary professional training, extraordinary leadership training, and was able to lead organizations that were global organizations and understand the world in new ways. The list can go on. I got to a point where I was in one of those windowless conference rooms at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I looked around the room, and the faces and just the energy was just so, there was not a happy person in that room. And I've been in that space too long. And I just said, I'm gonna do something else. And I didn't know what it was. And I told my bosses that I was gonna leave. And they at first thought that I was gonna go work for one of our competitors, but wouldn't tell them. And I was like, no, I'm not. They tried to get me drunk to find out who I was gonna go and work for, and like I would slip up. And they realized that wasn't it. Then they determined that I may have lost my mind, because I didn't have a job, and I was going to leave, and I was in a position where, you know, a lot of us in the private sector, part of what you do is you're creating financial stability, et cetera. And math on my decision made no sense to them. And they offered me a year's leave of absence. And I almost took that, but I realized that I wouldn't have been releasing myself. So I went to one of my mentors and I said, what should I do? I'm really terrified that that it's like cliff diving at night. And he looked at me. This is an incredibly accomplished tech titan named now. He looked at me and he said, but the water is deep. And I said, well, if I don't get a job, like, you know, can I clean your pool or something? What am I gonna do? I had no sense as to whether I had any realistic, I had no calibration on what my possibilities might be. And what he said was sage advice. He said, you cannot decide what is going to be next in your life professionally until you clear yourself of being so imbued in a culture, in any corporate culture. It's not just that company. It's any corporate culture. You become the distortion effect on who you are and what you want can sometimes really take you over. So I was terrified, and then I decided to go to Mexico for 2 weeks to drink tequila and body surf and clear my mind. And on the first day, standing on the beach, looking at the water, I'm kind of a water soul, the phone rang, and it was the executive search firm calling to tell me that there was a confidential national search for Mexico and the Seattle Foundation the first day. And my name had been put on the list, and was I interested?
So it seems like, when looking back on your resume and some of the things you've done in the community, there were things that you had done to put yourself in that place. Not only your leadership that you had at Microsoft, but your leadership in the community, you've been on boards, you've volunteered. Was any of that intentional? Or was it going more back to this idea of service that you've always had?
It was that itch. I don't know. My family has had a lot of examples of people who've had second acts, where that second act isn't one that is of service. I can give you an example. My brother was a Hollywood studio executive. He's 12 years older than me. He's a Hollywood studio executive, and in his mid-40s decided to stop that, went to medical school, and now is an emergency room doctor at LA County. So I had good examples, but I do remember that right at the height of my arrogance as a swashbuckling global director at Microsoft, I felt like, hey, I should try to do something to be of some value to the world. So I joined Social Venture Partners, and Social Venture Partners then deployed me onto one of its investees. This is, I can remember because my son is 13 now, and he was not yet born, so this is 14 years ago. And Kindering Center is an organization that helps infants and children with special needs soar and their families. And they sent me a videotape, a VHS tape. Those are those machines. A VHS tape. And in the conference rooms at the time, 14 years ago, there were VHS machines, and I grabbed a sandwich. I was flying to China that afternoon. Okay, I better watch this because I gotta meet with them next week. And luckily I'd shut the conference room door because I put the tape in, and on the tape, it was testimonies of these parents who Kindring Center children have been helped by. And one of these moms said, because of Kindring Center, I saw my child smile for the first time at the age of 3. And I lost it. You know, it tapped something in me. I completely was, there I was, you know, thinking I was God's gift to the world, weeping in a conference room, praying that nobody would walk in on me. And I realized what I had not been uncovering about myself, you know? So that began the journey of starting to do more and more, and then get to this point.
Can I go back to the sage advice really quick? Because there's a gap there that I'm just trying to key in on. One day, body surfing, phone call,
Yeah.
Seattle Foundation.
Yeah.
Did you do something to clear yourself? And also, do you do things to clear yourself routinely as you're kind of going through your life here?
That moment was a big choice, because I really had thought I needed to take 6 months and get clear before making a decision like that. But it felt sort of mystical, and it felt like an opportunity where, I learned enough to trust my instincts that it did not feel counter to what I was trying to achieve, so I decided to go for it. But it was early in the process, so there were several months of exploration. I then had ended up, just so you know, having two career options. One was going and working on leading the commercialization of previously government and intelligence cybersecurity tools for the largest defense contractor in the world to commercial sector. They built a bunch of really sophisticated cybersecurity stuff, and then wanted to go and sell it to private sector companies. And I would have made 3 times what I was making at Microsoft. Or I could go to Seattle Foundation and make of what I was making at Microsoft. And so it was like community foundation dedicated to a stronger, more vibrant community for all, or global arms deal. I mean, it was literally this
Tough
angel
decision.
and
It's like the perfect
No, trust me,
cartoon, right?
they made it quite a tough decision when I wasn't focused on what I knew was right. So for me to clear myself now, I really try to. My children do that a lot for me, and you know, people talk about their kids all the time, and I don't mean to be cliche about it, but diving into them and their experiences is a cleansing experience for me. It may be exhausting and frustrating and these other things, but it is in fact a cleansing experience for me. And then like everyone, I have my interests. My delineation between work and life has completely changed. My work is my life is my work. I'm working on things with my team here that are about the community that my kids grow up in. And the things we're working on here to, the Seattle International Foundation point, are inextricably tied to global issues. And I like that, actually. I like putting my 2 feet on the ground, knowing that what I'm gonna do in the morning is part of what I care about in my life. It's important, and it's a critical time. I am watching way too much cable news right now. I'm a news junkie, and so my alcohol intake and my cable news intake are like.
I was gonna say, you're gonna need another cleansing soon.
We're helping you with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. And I love to be in water. Scuba
Are you a swimmer?
dive. Yeah, and I scuba dive.
Nice.
In cold water.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Also looking at the transition from Microsoft to here, was there anything about your leadership style that changed? You had that one story earlier about trying to get folks to speak up more. Was there anything else that changed when you came here?
The board chair who led the board that hired me is also a mentor of mine now. So I picked up mentors in this phase of my life, who you may very well know, Martha Cho. Martha was the chief administrative officer of Gates Foundation. She was the board chair when I joined, and also a Buddhist priest and a former Seattle City Council member. Amazing, amazing, amazing. She asked me the most compelling question in the final stage of my interview process, which is, I work with some ex-Microsoft guys, wink, wink. What are you going to leave behind in Redmond? And it was a great question, because their concern about a professional profile like mine is this ex-tech guy so convinced he's smarter than everybody else, and everyone else is a muppet, and he's going to come in and break glass and cause destruction to this really important community asset. And it allowed me to explain the important lessons I'd learned that I wanted to emulate, and then my true humility about what I had to learn in this role, which I'll get to in a second. The systems and tools and methods and practices you learn in the private sector are actually highly applicable to the social sector. Anyone who just abstractly says, oh, don't think that all of the ways you do things at a bank, at a technology company, at a law firm, et cetera, are, that those will work. They're really, not only do they work, they're badly needed. Leadership models, organizational design, performance management, cross-group collaboration, the whole list of it. So the science of it is highly applicable. The orientation of your heart in terms of how you actually apply the science, totally different. So for example, I came in here thinking, man, we do a lot of consensus decision making. I feel like everything we do, I got 20 people involved in the decision. And I was about to, luckily my humility caught me before I made a horrific mistake, which it does not always. But I was about to do what I would have done at Microsoft. At Microsoft, I would have said, okay, you make the decision, you two get to give him advice, everybody else get back to work. Because that type of thing would have shown up in my old atmosphere as ambition-driven, self-promotion, control freakishness, just any number of things. And usually in that atmosphere, when you're breaking consensus decision-making that way, most people at the end of the day are glad you did. They're like, okay, the boss brought some order to chaos, and now we're going to be more effective, even though I wish I was in a decision. Here, it's because people, my team, so internalize and define what we do as a manifestation of who they are. If I have a program officer who is giving my marketing VP hell about a picture in our annual report that she believes is exploitive of an African-American child in the classic charity sense of the way, well, she's invested in that. If we don't listen to her, we can lose her. This is about how people think about their whole. People who work here have dedicated their lives to trying to help those around them. I can't break it up the way I broke it up at Microsoft. So I'm still learning that. I'm still a rookie in that respect. And luckily I have people around me who I can be vulnerable in my inadequacies in that respect, and who can teach me.
I'm going to go back to more something Brian brought up earlier, but about developing your team. How much time do you spend developing your team in their own skills and their own leadership? So you've got other good people around you here. And how much time would you ideally like to invest in that? Is it more than what you do now, or do you think you're a good one?
Culture shift is a major issue that we are working on here. The team is sort of in transition on that culture shift. The old model is, the nonprofit space can be sometimes glacially paced. It can be risk averse. It can be management by consensus. And then you add this sort of Seattle layer of passive aggressive and this is my valley and whatever you do in your valley is your business, pioneering Northwest thing. And it's a big thing. One of my mentors gave me great advice. When you're trying to shift a culture, be extremely intentional about it. Don't try to do it sort of undercover. And as a result, we have these very explicit behaviors that we are trying to model for each other. And they are things like bad news travels fast, brutal honesty without brutality, put the problem in the middle of the room, and we're really trying to focus on those while we also implement business systems and methods alongside those that can make us more effective.
Okay. What are some of the struggles you have still with the culture change that I could imagine? A lot of things you talk about are like efficiency, getting better efficiencies, adapting to the new sort of world of philanthropists in the community. What are some of the struggles that you didn't anticipate beyond culture, I guess, that just implementing more efficient workplace models in this job that I think over the last 2 years haven't gotten to the place that you had thought they would, if any?
Well, there's an internal cultural answer to that question, and then there's a bigger system and strategy answer. I'll try to do both quickly. How are we doing on time? All right?
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to do a shift here in a second,
Okay.
just to switch to
Okay.
secondary.
So on the internal culture, one of the biggest surprise I've had is how hard it is for people to break through and talk to each other honestly, vulnerably, and courageously. I kind of thought that because people are in this work because of their heart, that they'd be extremely good at that type of connection and dialogue, and they're not. I have 2 team members who lead 2 teams that have to work well together for the core engine of the foundation to work. And I just gotten enough of I had enough of an observation, gotten enough feedback that wasn't really happening. They were very polite to each other. I think they genuinely like each other as friends. They were completely conflict avoiding, and they were not actually partnering and looking back at their 2 teams and saying we're 2 in a box in terms of your accountability to work well together to us. They were just avoiding. So I took them out for drinks and I said, okay, we're going to break through on this. Drinks is not a recurring theme, but it's useful sometimes. We're going to break through on this, and let me tell you what I think's going on. And I told them the problems. And they looked at me and said, no, Tony, no, we're great. We get along. We're terrific. We work together. People may not always see it, but I think it's all okay. I said, okay, you tell the other one that the number one thing that they do that pisses you off, and then after that, you tell him the number one thing he does that pisses you off. They're like, they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. And I said, I just stuck the thermometer in the chicken, and what you're saying is not cooked. Because if you had that relationship, you'd laugh, you'd say it, you'd say, when he does this, it makes me feel good, and they couldn't do it. So it took another round of drinks before it started, and man, did the lid come off. One of them just looked at the other and just said, I think you're imperious.
Wow.
Whoa! You know, bartender! And then it started. And so it's been surprising to me because I was born and raised in a small island in Atlantic called Manhattan. So I'm a New Yorker.
Yeah.
plus I spent 22 years in the tech sector, and I'm Irish Mexican, and so like, I don't have a problem with that, but what I realized is safety and trust is just such an elusive thing, you know, to build in a team with people. And no number of leadership books at Barnes & Noble or rope courses you can pay consultants $50,000 for is going to do it. You have to start to model it. You have to start to show people that as they come out, they are not going to be punished for it. So you know, that's a tough thing for a leader to do. I'm surprised by that.
How's that relationship working out between those two folks?
It's the thing I've learned about human behavior, because I used to negotiate deals a lot in my career. I started on endless plane rides reading psychology books, and it's interesting to me. And what I've learned about human behavior is incremental experience